close to us but far from God. And the truth is that the Bible teaches if those people were to die today, being far from God, they would spend all of eternity in hell. And God's placed them in our circle, so not that we could just be their friend, not just so that we could make them comfortable, but so that we could tell them about Jesus. And so they're people, moms and dads, aunts and uncles, cousins, co-workers. There's all these people that God's placed close to us so that we could give the gospel. And so it's each one of us could reach one person for the gospel. Who would that one person be? Who is one person in your mind that you know if they died today that they would spend all of eternity in hell, but God's got them close to you? I don't know who that is for you, but just a challenge to think of it, think of them. And as we talk today, we're going to talk about the reality of eternity. You know that no matter what you think about eternity, it is a reality. It's like this. If you took off down Highway 54 and you just said, man, I don't believe in speed limits. There's no reality of a speed limit to me. You know what would still be in existence? A speed limit? I think it's 80 miles per hour on Highway 54. I don't know. But the truth is, there is one. And if you said, I don't care about it, it's still there. And let one of them cops catch you going well over it, and they're going to remind you, hey, and just tell them, like, for me, it's just not a thing. I don't believe in this. We don't care what you think of it. The truth is the truth. And the truth is this. There is an eternity that takes place after this. There's two options. There's heaven or hell. We're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about just that reality. But I was reading something that I came across. I thought it was pretty interesting. A teacher was teaching class, and as she was teaching, she had this young boy, and she's talking to him, and she can see there at like his sleeve line that he's got a bruise. So, being a good teacher, she starts to kind of ask questions, talking to the young boy, and the boy, nothing. He's kind of standoffish, and the teacher gets him warmed up, and the young boy finally says, "My dad hit me." Well, man, that put the teacher in a very bad spot because she knew the family, she loved the dad, she loved the kid, and she knew that if she told anybody that this was going to cause a big old rift in the family and friendship. But did you know that the law says that she was mandated to report it no matter how she felt? And so she had a responsibility to go and to tell and to make a report. You know that's true about doctors, counselors, law enforcement. Like all these professionals don't have the luxury of just staying silent. They had to say something. You know it's true for pastors. Like pastors are required, mandated by law that if we know that somebody's going to hurt themselves or hurt somebody or they've been hurt by somebody, that we're required by law to make a report. You know, spiritually, you and I are mandated reporters. That spiritually, you and I have a mandate from God to tell people that you are in a spiritually bad place, and if you don't change, you'll spend all of eternity in a place called hell. But for some reason, we seem to be okay being silent with that. Maybe even to an extreme that we would be less okay being silent about somebody being physically abused, but we would be okay being silent about the spiritual reality of their life. Can you imagine if a doctor knew somebody had a terminal illness and they just said, I'm not going to say nothing? You know what we would do if we found out about that? I mean, we would be up in arms. Imagine if you heard tomorrow that one of the teachers at the local school knew a child was being beat and had seen it and observed it and just didn't say nothing because she didn't want to cause a rift. I mean, we would be on the good, bad, and ugly saying, man, that teacher should be fired. We'd be at the next teacher or the next school board meeting being like, why is this teacher here? The teachers are supposed to protect our children. Imagine if the fire department, they were in their big red trucks and they were driving and there was a house that was on fire and they said, we've got other things to do. That would be crazy to think about. But for some reason spiritually, we're okay cruising by, looking at people that we know are going to spend all of eternity in hell and saying nothing. So we're going to look at a story today, and we're going to look at just two realities that take place. And the title of the sermon is The Reality of an Eternity. And it starts we'll be in Luke 16, verses 19 through 31. And it starts in verse 19. It says, there was a rich man who would dress in purple and fine linen, feasting lavishly every day. This guy, he gets no name at all. He's just the rich man. And there's two reasons we know he's rich. One, it says it, the rich man, but also he dressed in purple. Like that was a sign of royalty. That was a sign like he had made it. Like he wasn't wearing like the Spalding, like he was wearing the Versace. Like he had it figured out. Like he showed up in his Versace with his Starbucks, and like he just went through the drive-through, like in his brand new car. Like he has it made. Like you guys can kind of picture what we're talking about nowadays. Like when you look at him, you're like, man, do they have a financial struggle in their life? This guy doesn't. Like, I mean, he is just feasting lavishly. And so this guy with no name is compared to this other guy. In verse 20, it says, a poor man, his name's Lazarus, covered with sores, was lying at his gate. Okay, so rich man, not just so rich that he's got the nice car and the coffee and the thing. His house got a gate around it. And it must be such a place that people are like, I ain't got nothing. I'll go sit here outside this guy's gate. And it says that he longed to be filled with what fell from the rich man's table. Now, I told you all before, we got 4 dogs. And you know what happens at our house when things fall on the floor? They become dog food. And sometimes by them just being there, but sometimes if we make a good mess, like we whistle for the dogs. Like we know if they come in, we don't even need to own mops. We own dogs. Like they will clean it. They don't eat lemons. Like we're mean. Sometimes we'll throw our dog a lemon and he freaks out a little. But this guy, it says he longs for that food. Can you imagine longing for food that's falling from somebody's table? That's a bad place. Like this guy has nothing. Like if you're longing for table scraps, like you've got nothing. And on top of that, it says he was covered in sores that dogs would come and lick. Now, you guys are probably weird, and it's okay, but some of you all probably buy your dogs clothes. And you got little sweaters, and like you got like little cute nicknames for your dogs, and like if maybe you have a purse for them. That's too far, but so be it. However you've seen fit to do it is okay. But they're like your little like fur babies. We've heard that term, and I just thought fur baby was a hairy child for the longest time. But you got these fur babies. But in their day, dogs were dirty. Like they weren't like something you just like whistled for old Frodo to jump on your bed and like you're like, oh, I love you. No, these things are nasty, mangy, just dirty dogs. They would come and they would lick his wounds. This guy's got nothing. You want to know what his name means, or was in Greek? It was Eleazar, which means this: God has helped. What? What has God helped? Like, does it sound like God? I mean, sitting outside a gate, dogs are licking your wounds, you're just so hungry that you're longing for food to fall off the table, and you get the name God has helped. Okay, 2 men. One has it all, one has nothing. Life happens in verse 22. It says, one day the poor man died. He was carried away by angels to Abraham's side. The rich man also died and was buried. Well, there's a reality for you guys, is that everybody has an appointment with death unless Jesus returns before that. So, rich or poor, we all have an appointment with death that we're going to have to meet at some point. And they meet theirs, and one's carried away by angels to Abraham's side. The other was buried and tormented in Hades, it says in verse 23. He looked up, and he saw Abraham long off with Lazarus at his side. This picture is Lazarus is carried off, and he's placed with Abraham. And you guys remember something, Father Abraham? Like this is a picture of being carried off after death and being at your Father's side. It's a picture of heaven for you and I. That at one point, if we die and we've trusted in Jesus, we'll be carried off and we'll be at the side of the Father. The other guy, though, he goes to Hades, a place of torment. And it wasn't his wealth that condemned him, because Abraham was rich himself. And so we know it wasn't money. It was that he neglected what matters the most. And so he's there in Hades. He looks up. He sees Abraham and he sees Lazarus. And he says, Father Abraham, have mercy and send Lazarus to dip his finger in the water and cool my tongue, because I am in agony in this flame. Well, one thing that you almost read past is Lazarus, covered in sores that dogs were licking, now must be in such a place that those wounds are gone, that his body's normal, to such a place that guy would say, man, send him to dip his finger. And another thing is that guy's in such a bad place that the guy that he watched dogs lick his wounds, he's like, I'd lick water off his finger. It's that bad. That's bad. Abraham says, son, remember that during your life, you received good things. Just as Lazarus received bad things, but now he's comforted here while you are in agony. He says, besides that, besides the fact that you had everything on earth and he had nothing, and you chased after all the things of the earth, and he sat at your gate and he begged, but God had helped. There's this great chasm fixed between you and I. There's this chasm that I couldn't come and help you if I wanted. And you couldn't come here if you wanted. It says it's fixed, so neither of us can cross it. Okay. This man processes this, and he says, okay, that's fine. In verse 27, he says, Father, then I beg you, send him to my father's house. If Lazarus can't come and help me, if you'd send him to my father's house, because I've got 5 brothers, and you've got to warn them that this place is bad, and this is a place of torment, and they don't want to come here. Just send them to my brothers. Please, Abraham, if you would do that. Abraham says that they had Moses and the prophets, they should listen to him. No, Abraham. If someone from the dead goes back, surely they'd listen then. And Abraham tells them if they don't listen to Moses, they don't listen to the prophets, they won't be persuaded as somebody rise from the dead. And so he says is this, he says, all the Old Testament, all the God delivered, all the stories of God showing up in these miraculous ways, all these stories of God carrying his people, and if they didn't listen to that, they surely are not going to listen if somebody from the dead raises again. And that hits hard because the truth is this, we know somebody's raised from the dead. We believe that Jesus Christ defeated death and that if you and I were trusting him that we could have everlasting life. But the truth is this, some people just aren't even persuaded by that. But this teaches us a lot about hell. Really, the Bible talks 3 times as much about hell as it does heaven. I think the reason of that is that the Bible, God wants you to understand that this place is not a place that you want to go to. Like the place called hell, it's not a friendly place. A lot of times we want to avoid it. It's like it's this taboo topic of hell. I remember the first time ever as a senior pastor, I preached on the topic of hell, and I said hell, and one of the kids, he was probably between 8 and 10, he kind of gasped and told his mom he cussed. Yeah, and I kind of chuckled, and then as I kind of processed it, I kind of felt bad. 8, 9, 10-year-olds should know that hell's not a cuss word, but that it's a place that is a reality that people who don't trust in Jesus will spend all of eternity. Now, some of us are probably more apt to use hell as a curse word than we would ever use it to warn somebody about the place, but that's neither here nor there. Here's what we know. Hell is real. Without a shadow of doubt, the Bible teaches us hell is real. It also teaches us this, hell is eternal. Mark 9:48 says, where the worm does not die and the fire is not quenched. It means this, you don't get out, you don't get a furlough, you don't get work release, you don't get second chance. Like just like we like to sing and praise and get excited about, man, that when we die, we get to spend all of eternity, which is forever and forever and forever and forever in the presence of God. That means that the opposite must be true as well, that those who don't get to spend forever and forever and forever and forever under the punishment of God in a place called hell. It's eternal. It's a place of pain. There's no help. Like nobody, not just Lazarus isn't going, nobody is coming to dip their finger in the water and to bring it to you when you're there. It says in Matthew 8:12, the sons of the kingdom will be thrown into the outer darkness, and there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. And my mind can't fathom that kind of pain that would cause you to gnash your teeth in such a way that you would get down to just the nerve ending, but you're still in so much pain that even feels better. So you just keep gnashing your teeth and you never, ever, ever stop. There's no alleviation of the pain. Hell's also a place of fear. Fear of the absolute darkness. Jude 13 says that forming their shameful deeds, wandering stars for whom the blackness of darkness is reserved forever. Can you imagine the pitch darkness, and as you hear the screams and the tormenting that's taking place, and you get to see nothing there in front of you as you hear the screams, as you hear those people who are crying. Fear of being totally separated from God. But there will be something of God there. His wrath will be poured out. But even here on earth, you know that unsaved people get to see His mercy, His grace, and His goodness. Like even unsaved people get to feel the warm sun rays that He's given. Even unsaved people get to walk out and they get to see God's goodness in their lives, even though they don't deserve it. But there, they'll see none of it. There, His goodness and His love and His mercy and His grace and His long bearing will be completely gone. The fear of isolation and loneliness. I spend time telling people about Jesus, and every now and again I come across like those real tough people. Like they're not scared of anything. And I'll try to tell them about it, and they're like, I ain't worried about hell. Sounds like a hell of a time if you ask me. My buddies are going to be there. Going to be booze. There's going to be unlimited booty. Like, we're going to have it all. You're like, what did you read that got you thinking that? And they're like, yeah, it's going to be all this. And I read this story, and you know what I see? I see a guy that shows up to a place, and it's not this party that they talk about. It not only is it just not a party, like, because if it was a party, like his 5 brothers, he's like, dude, I can't wait for y'all to get here. Like, he's writing home like, boys, you got to understand, you think Bud Light's good? Wait till you down here and get this. Like, it's the best. No. He begs. They don't want to come here. It's far from a party. It's far from a good time. It's tormenting. Isolation and loneliness. He ain't got no friends, and he's alone, suffering. Also, the fear of facing God's justice. Philippians 2 says this, at the name of Jesus, every knee will bow in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue will confess that Jesus is Lord. I think the other thing is the fear of knowing it's too late. He begs Abraham, warn someone to tell his family. You notice he calls him Father Abraham. Like he had an understanding of the Old Testament. He had an understanding of the prophets. He had an understanding of Abraham, that he calls him Father Abraham, but he had never trusted in God. Maybe he should have told his brothers. But it's too late now. And he sits there. I was thinking what hell's full of. You know what hell is full of? Believers who believe too late. Believers who trusted too late. But I was also thinking about this. You know, there's a lot of good things that are going to be in hell. Like good people. Good people are going to be in hell. I'm talking like people who aren't good next to Jesus. Like we understand, no, none are good, none are righteous before God. I'm talking about like good people. Like grandma that makes the good cookies, and the grandma that's there to comfort you when things are bad, but doesn't know Jesus. Yeah, she'll make it to hell. I'm talking about the good mom that loves her kids and does everything she can, and she's sacrificial, and she's good by all humanly standards. She's the best mother you could ever imagine, but she doesn't know Jesus. There'll be good moms in hell. I'm talking about the good kid that listens every time you tell them, hey, clean your room. They clean the room, and not only do they clean the room, but they do it with excellence, and they've got everything labeled, and they put it in the right place, and their drawers shut and open without having to force it. Like those good kids, if they've not trusted in Jesus, they'll be in hell. Like hell is going to be full of good people. Courteous, loving people. People who don't even get road rage. Like those people. Those kind of good people. Like people who may outpace you and I in goodness, but they don't know Jesus. They'll spend all of eternity in hell. Because the truth is this. Morality may keep you out of jail, but it will not keep you out of hell. You can be the most moral person on earth, and only the blood of Jesus will keep you out of hell. There's also good vision in hell, which is kind of funny to think about. It's complete darkness. And the one thing he gets to see is all the way into heaven. All the way beside Abraham, he gets to see Lazarus sitting there at the side of Abraham. And vision so good that clearly he can see that there's a pool of water. And he says, send Lazarus, he must recognize him, to dip his finger in that pool of water and bring it to me. That's good vision. Can you imagine with me, someone goes to hell and they get to peer up into heaven and they get to see you. And they get to say, That's Andy. Andy and I, man, we worked at the coffee shop together, man. Tell Andy I'm here. Like Andy will come help me. Like just let him know I'm here. Great chasm fixed between us that Andy couldn't go help him if he wanted to. And imagine the vision's so good that your child looks up and sees you. Says, that's my dad. My dad trusted Jesus, and yeah, Dad trusted Jesus at 13 and wanted nothing to do with him after that, but in his heart, he truly trusted him. Why didn't my dad tell me about Jesus? Vision so good as they sit in hell. You know what else is good in heaven, or good in hell? Prayers. Good prayers in hell. You hear what he says? Crying out, pleading to Abraham, send them to my brothers. Send them to my brothers so that somebody could warn them. We used to do a thing called Judgment House. I don't know. Someone reminded me of Heaven's Gates, Hell's Fires, which is more of a play. Judgment House was like a play, but it was long and drawn out, and you went to different rooms. And the way it went was the first place you would go is like you'd come into a room like this, and there was a family, and the family was doing like dinner, or they were just hanging out, or talking about like graduating. Like there was something that the family was talking about, and you got to see how warm and cozy the family was, and it was kind of a cool little thing. And then you walk down a hallway, and you go into another room, and now you're with, like the mom and dad are gone, and you've got like one of the kids with their friends, and they're talking about like, yeah, I got these booze from my dad's cupboard, like we're gonna get drunk tonight. And that kid's like a little bit like they're acting all this out, like a little bit on the fence, but like okay, and like they decide to do it, and they get drunk. And you know what the next scene is? The next scene is a car that's flipped over with that same kid hanging out the window because they got drunk and drove, and that kid died in a car wreck. And I remember as a teenager going to these things, and I'm like, what the heck is going on? And then they lead you downstairs to the basement, and like it's dark and there's smoke, and you're like, what is this? And it was this picture of hell. And like it didn't matter how braced and ready you were, all of a sudden people would start to scream, help me, help me. And you're like, what is going on? And there stood Satan, and this was his kingdom. And those people were being tormented. And I remember as a teenager thinking, man, this place is bad. But they were crying out, help me, please, Lord, help me, send someone to help me. That is what people will cry out for all of eternity in hell. Good prayers will be prayed in hell, but it will be too late. There's also good memory in hell. He says, remember, you had it all. I mean, literally, rich man, you had everything. You had all the food, you had all the clothes, you had all the house, you had all the gate, you had all the service. I mean, you had it all. And you spent your life chasing after more. But you remember Lazarus. He sat at your gate, longing for what you had and he didn't have. Watching Lazarus as the dogs ate it. Like, you remember it. What you didn't know is Lazarus trusted God at some point, and God helped him. And you never did. But you remember it. You and I, we're going to have good memory. And our prayer every Sunday is that God speaks to your heart. And that he moves in such a way that you see him for all that he is. And he changes your eternity forever. But let me tell you, those who stand in hell, they remember a time that somebody stood before them and told them about the gospel of Jesus Christ. And they remember hearing about the cross that Jesus hung on. They remember hearing about the tomb that was rolled, or the rock that was rolled in front of the tomb. They remember hearing the story of Jesus defeating death, and probably the same line that every pastor says, that if you trust Jesus, you can have everlasting life today. Like, they remember that stuff. But it's just too late. But there's good memory in hell. There's also good theology in hell. Better theology than we got today, I can promise you that. There is not one atheist in hell. They're not. They know fully, without a shadow of a doubt, that God is who he says he is. They know that Jesus is who he says he is. They see Satan for who Satan is. Like they've got it figured out. And I think that the truth is, a lot of people make it to hell and they've got religiosity figured all out. Like, they know the answers. They know how to walk the walk in front of people. But something in their heart has never taken place. They've never trusted Jesus in their heart. And they're going to get to hell and they're going to say, Father, Father. And he'll say, depart from me, for I do not know you. I think that there's better, like more people in hell who know more about the Bible than you and I. Like people who have studied the Bible to every dot of an I, every cross of a T, down to just every single verse, and they know it really well, but guess where they spend all of eternity? In hell. They could have wrote papers for years on theology, but they'll spend all of eternity in hell because you can know it all, but unless He knows you, unless you've trusted Him as His Savior and given it all to Him, you too will spend all of eternity in hell. There's also really, really good priorities in hell. I mean, first priority, He wanted to take care of Himself. I mean, that's a pretty good priority. Dip His finger in that water so that I could be relieved of this agony. Then when that doesn't work, He says, okay, I can't help myself. I'll help others. Please, Abraham, I've got these 5 brothers. This is bad. Don't let them come here. His number one priority after he knew he couldn't help himself was to help others. This guy had 5 people on his list that he wanted to make sure they didn't make it to where he was going. Our challenge to you over this would be the 3rd week of this Each One Reach One, was to think of one person. One person that you would have a heart for, that you'd say, man, I'd be willing to do whatever to tell them about Jesus. Spurgeon said this: if sinners be damned, at least let them leap to hell over our bodies. If they perish, let them perish with our arms about their knees. Let no one go there unwarned or unprayed for. That they'd have to leap over us to get there. Our arms draped around their feet, saying, you don't want to go there. It's bad. You don't want to spend all of eternity in this place. It's going to be suffering. It's going to be the gnashing of teeth. Where you're going right now, you don't want to go, and you're wrapping your legs around them. What I worry about sometimes is I think that there's people who would be more convicted in hell to tell them about hell than there are people in churches to tell them about hell. There's good intentions in hell. People who I was going to come, I was going to do this, I was going to give my life. Like, all these good intentions will be there. I was going to tell my kids, I was going to tell my wife, I was going to tell my coworkers. Hell's paved with good intentions. Good intentions don't get you to heaven, but Jesus will. So here's the challenge. That we would let the reality of hell burden our heart. That we would know that there is an eternity that people will spend either in heaven or in hell. And we would let, as believers, the reality of hell burden our hearts for others. That we would be willing to tell them about Jesus Christ. I want you to think of something. I'll tell you a story. You think of your story as I tell you this. I was like 12, maybe 13 years old, and I was at summer camp, Camp Rising Sun, down outside Lake of the Ozarks. It was an open-air camp, no AC anywhere. And we had an open amphitheater, and we would go every night, and we would listen to this guy talk about Jesus. And I remember I always had buzz cuts, probably because they were cheap, I don't know. But I had a yellow shirt that was a button-up shirt. I mean, I'm telling you, I looked snazzy. I've always been about the same height, and there's been many times I've been about the same width as I was as tall. I was short and portly my whole life. And I've got a picture of me at this camp. And I love this picture. This is why I love it. It was the day I gave my life to Jesus. I remember sitting in this amphitheater, pouring sweat down. I mean, I was chunky. I always sweat. And I'm sitting there, and this guy's talking about Jesus. I don't even remember this guy's name. But I remember as the tears started coming, and I knew in my heart, man, I need that guy named Jesus. And so I hang on to that picture because I want to hang on to that moment that I remember what it felt like to go from death to life. And I wanted to use that moment in my life so that I would never lose sight of what it meant for that to happen, that I would say, man, I got to tell other people that. Man, if other people could feel this, man, they'd want all of it they could get. And so you think about that. You think of the moment in your life that Jesus took you from death to life. You pair that with the reality that hell is real. That hell's just not a place that it talks about, but hell is a real eternity that real people are going to spend all of eternity suffering. And you remember that moment that God took you from death to life. And then think of that one person. That one person in your life that's near to you and far from the Lord. And this week, just today preferably, just call them. I want to tell you a story. If they love you and they're maybe as close to you as you want, or you think they are, they'll listen to a story you want to tell them. I'm telling you, I've got people I could call right now, and they would listen to me tell them a story about a shoebox. Like, they just listen. They say, what in the world is he talking about? Like, someone help me. Like, I'm telling you, they'll listen to what I want to say. And this is what I want you to tell them. Can I tell you about the moment Jesus changed my life? They may not receive Jesus in that phone call. They may just kind of say, oh, that's a cool story. And just ask them, what do you think about letting Jesus change your life? Would you come to church with me this Sunday? What are they going to argue with you about? We're not talking theology. We're not trying to convince them of our soteriology or eschatology, or we're not trying to convince them of any of these theologies. The truth be this, the denominational lines and all this stuff, like does it matter? Well, it for sure matters, but let me tell you, you can go to heaven with some poor theology. Like if you've trusted in the blood of Jesus, you can make it to heaven and you can get there and be like, oh, my eschatology was crap, sorry. Like it's okay. Like your friends and family need to hear about the blood of Jesus way more than they need to understand the doctrine of the Trinity. Just, can I tell you about how Jesus changed my life? And just tell them. Tell them about that moment that you sat there. And you know what I like about this? If you can't walk yourself through that moment that Jesus changed your life, he may not have. You may think you're saved. You may feel that you had this moment at some, but if you can't go back to that moment, and I'm not saying you've got to know date and time and everything, but you should clearly know in your heart, man, Jesus changed my life. Just ask him, can I tell you? People talk about, man, how can a loving God send good people to hell? I'll invite the praise team up. I want you to know this, he doesn't. Like every single one of us has a ticket that was punched towards hell. Our sin caused it. We've been separated from God because of it. And God said, I love you enough that I'm willing to give you a new ticket. And I don't know what ticket you hold. I don't know if your ticket's punched for heaven, that you know that you've trusted in Jesus and you're heaven bound. But if you're sitting here today and you're not sure, I want to talk to you. Brayden will be down front. I'll hang out afterwards. We want to talk to you about what it looks like to put your faith in Jesus Christ. To know without a shadow of doubt that if I died today, I would spend all of eternity in heaven. We don't want you to leave today not knowing. Like when you roll the dice on this stuff, the risk is too large. And it's not to scare you, but I want you to know you're not promised tomorrow. And too many people that we know think that tomorrow is there and they never wake up for tomorrow. But we've been so accustomed to getting up every single day and waking up that we're just like, I've got tomorrow to do it. What if you don't? And what if you do roll that dice and it lands on the side that you get to spend all of eternity in hell? Man, that's a big price to pay for a loving God who's already made a way for you to get to heaven.